Cindy Hook. But first, it's February and the holiday season is well and truly over. As sleep-ins and me time become a distant memory, it's common to suffer a bout of back-to-work blues before the New Year's resolutions get broken one by one. So how can you make sure you start your working year with a bang and make sure this is the year you keep the promises that you've made to yourself and achieve your goals? Well, to discuss, we're joined by Pete Clark, the Asian Pacific Director of Executive Coaching firm Rojan SI, and John Raymond, the Principal of the Institute of Executive Coaching and Leadership. Thanks so much for joining us in the studio today, guys.
Thanks, Ingrid.
So it's a tough time sometimes to come back to work if you're lucky enough to have had a break. John, I might kick it off with you. How do you just give us some simple advice as to how you start the year off with a bang rather than the sort of dragging your heels that you sometimes feel when you finish a holiday?
Yeah, look, I mean, one of the things is to kind of expect it. Like, you know that kind of you still want to be on holidays, you'd still rather be at the beach than in the office. And so just kind of acknowledge that it's going to happen. But I think what you focus on when you're going to work, like what are you anticipating, what are you thinking about, is actually critical to how that experience actually plays out. Yeah. So, you know, thinking about the things that you're excited about. Obviously, not all parts of work are exciting and interesting, but there are parts that, you know, that are interesting, that does serve you. And so I would encourage people to kind of focus on those, particularly getting back into the year.
Pete, what do you think? What's your view on how to kick off the year?
A couple of things. One would be work out what your habits and rituals are from prior to the break and continue with them. So if you start at 9, start at 9. If you finish at 5, finish at 5. I know there's some advice out there that you'd slope off early. Yeah. That's not my advice. You've got to get back into the feeling. Yeah,
so, you know, don't come in late the first day back.
No.
Kicks you off on a bad foot.
Almost coming early.
All right, and just get
across some of those admin things.
Well, that sort of gets me started on something, because some people come back and they say, come back on a Thursday or a Friday so that you can sort of get your emails done, get into the swing of things, then you've got another weekend and then you can kick off Monday with a bang. I mean, I think you guys might have different views on this, but what's your view on that?
Look, I'm a fan of actually, look, if you're at work, come back to work, get into it, get over it, and move on. But I know that there are some people that absolutely swear by that philosophy. You know, I'm going to start work on Tuesday so that I can get my personal stuff done, and just kind of, it's only a 4-day week, so then I can build up to a 5-day week the next time. So I think there's a bit of personal preference. My personal preference, make a clean break with holidays and get them to work, I reckon.
Say goodbye.
Yeah.
But I think if you're going to do that, and it'll depend the role you've got, is give yourself a time limit. Yeah. So don't make it all day. Make it a couple of hours, and then after that couple of hours, back onto the new stuff.
Do you think it is a personal thing, though? I mean, do you think everyone's different to an extent?
They are different, although my experience would suggest that the feeling of motivation is the wrong way to go about it. We think we need to feel motivated to do something. It's the other way around. We do something and then the feeling ensues.
It comes.
So
how do you give yourselves a more, John, I might ask you this, in terms of positive mindset going into work? You know, when perhaps some people don't like their jobs as much as they should, how do you give yourself that positive swing?
Well, I guess that there's a couple of things. Like, there's always stuff that you enjoy about work. Like, no matter how bad it is, there's always stuff that you like. You know, it might be the people that you work with. It might be some of the projects that you're on.
It might be just getting that coffee in the morning.
It might be, got a great coffee place around the corner. But I think one thing that I would suggest is that to really kind of pan back and look at a whole of life. You know, so work is a major part, absolutely. Yep. But what are the other things in your life that you love, rather than just focusing on work? You know, what are you going to do after work? You know, your friends, your family, your kids, and kind of take a whole of life view, I would say.
Do you agree with that in terms of maybe having a routine around work and enjoying that aspect of it?
Definitely a routine and focusing on the positive, because for every negative there's a positive.
Yeah, right.
And also add in, set some goals. Some short, some medium, some long-term goals for the month, for the year, and work towards those.
So I mean, that brings me into goal setting. Yeah. That's a really tough thing, because a lot of people sort of say, you know, I was reading something about New Year's resolutions and everyone said, look, I don't make them anymore because I always break them.
Yeah. Well, New Year's resolutions are actually old year's confessions, ultimately.
Right. So look forward instead of looking back. Yeah. So what sort of goals? I mean, how do you set goals appropriate for the new year?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was running a breakfast this morning, and I actually, there were about 60 people there, and I said, you know, who set New Year's resolutions? And only about 5 of the people put the hand up. So it's not only kind of last year's confessions, but I think it's very last year, full stop.
Yeah.
But I think there's some interesting things around setting goals. And for some people, setting goals is not the thing to do. Like, I was talking to a colleague, and she had a really rough year last year, you know, some illness in the family, a relationship breakup, and it was a tough year. And she said she got to New Year's Eve, and she said, you know what? I just want to kind of go into the year really open-minded. And so for her, setting goals actually wasn't the right thing.
Because you can't always plan for everything that's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's right.
Is there a way, though, you can set sort of appropriate and realistic goals, Pete, in your view, going in?
Well, I'm not a big believer in realistic goals, because what's the point?
Yeah.
So at Roger and SI, when we work with clients, we often will go through a process to set the goals.
Yep.
And the last step is actually to take some action. And I've worked with groups, and we give them 10 minutes to take the action. And I've had people say to me, you know, I've waited 12 months to do that, and it took me 2 minutes to do it.
So when you say take action, what do you mean? Just take that first step towards the goal?
That first step. What's the first step? And we actually then encourage them to do it.
On the spot?
On the spot.
Yeah.
And it's a 2-minute task, but they've waited 12 months to do it.
Because sometimes the anticipation is actually worse than
What's the
the
F
action
and the
itself,
C word?
right?
Fear and can't.
Okay.
Those words get in the way of
Yeah.
us actually taking the action. And yet the action is pretty simple.
I mean, in terms of goals, should we set them then, John, to be sort of unachievable almost? I mean, above what we can achieve just to try to make us strive higher? Or is that going to sort of make you unmotivated almost to achieve them?
Look, there's some really interesting research coming out about goal setting, and probably for the last 20 or 30 years, there's been this, certainly in organisations, this notion of setting stretch goals and stretch targets that will improve performance beyond if you just set a realistic one. But what the research is showing is that people are actually having a negative impact on them. So it's causing a breakdown in relationship. It's causing impacts on their ability to perform. It's actually quite a like the dark side of goals.
Yeah, because it can sort of make you lose motivation when you feel like you're not achieving your goals, Pete.
That's right. So I would encourage people to set big goals, but make the steps attainable. So I think that research is backed up by suggesting that totally focused just on the goal is what's causing the stress.
Do you write them out? I mean, is that something, I mean, it's practical, but do you write them out?
Visualise them.
Yeah.
Yes, all of the above.
Yeah. And I think, you know, writing out the steps and writing out the measurements of success. So what are the things that I'm looking at that are going to indicate that I'm actually making progress towards my goal? Because I think, as you said, a lot of people focus on just the end goal. Yeah. But often that's a big journey, and you can get demotivated because, oh, God, I haven't got there yet.
Yeah, that's right.
But if you look at the steps and kind of acknowledging the progress that you've made, it's actually quite a motivational approach.
Do things like self-talk help? I mean, in terms of positive thinking and self-talk?
It's the one big barrier.
Right.
So you'll have people inside their head saying, I can't, I can't, or that's not good enough. Whereas the positive self-talk is, OK, I haven't done that yet. So that's always my encouragement to my kids.
But is that something you can train yourself to do?
Yes, it is.
So you just have to practice, is it?
Yes, you just have to practice. It's that internal voice.
I mean, I guess you need to have the awareness first, and I think that's one thing. Like, we're so busy kind of doing stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great to take action, but you actually need to step back and reflect on, so what am I saying to myself, and how is that supporting or not me to achieve these goals?
And be kind to yourself in that sense, because often the internal voice is saying, keep going, keep going, keep going, when in fact, actually today it's okay. As long as tomorrow I do something.
Right, so give yourself a break as well.
Correct.
Pete, you say it's important to visualise success. How do you actually do this, though? Is this all through positive self-talk as well? I mean...
Yeah, well, we know that we all visualise anyway. Otherwise, you wouldn't know where your car's parked.
Yeah.
So it's using and enhancing that part of your brain to imagine what the future could be. Now, it's not going to manifest exactly, but it's more likely to give your brain focus so that when you're aware of all the distractions, it's going to help you focus on that thing that you'll need to achieve that goal.
And I would add to that what you want to do is actually write that down or document it in some way. Some people are very visual, so they'll have, you know, pictures that represent that. Some people, you know, happy to do it handwritten or even in kind of pictures and stick figures and stuff. But I think actually getting it out of your head and putting it down on paper really serves you.
Yeah.
Tell people who'll remind you.
Who hold you accountable?
Yeah. Not your best friends, because they'll go, it's okay, you don't have to do it. Or tell someone that's going to go, oi, what are you doing?
But how do you stay, I mean, putting goals aside, how do you stay motivated in general in the workplace? You know, when you know you've got a full year ahead of you, you've taken your leave, so you can't be looking forward to a holiday or something coming up soon. How do you sort of deal with the daily grind of coming to work doing the same thing every day?
Well, I think that the thing that speaks to is how committed you are to your goal. Yeah. And commitment is made up of three things. One is, how important is this goal to me? Now, we've got lots of kind of challenges and lots of things that might conflict. So not only how important it is to me, but how is it important relative to everything else? The second thing is how confident I am that I can do what I need to do. And the other thing is taking a more broader view. It's like, how achievable is it? Like, do I have the bandwidth in my week, in my day, to be able to do this?
What if you're someone, Pete, that doesn't really have any particular sort of aspirations for your job. You're sort of just doing the daily grind. Is it a matter of actually making aspirations, trying to have something to sort of look forward to in your career, or is it something else? I mean, what if you're not sort of aspiring to be the top of your game?
Yeah, I think it's you've coined it in the phrase looking forward to.
Yeah.
And I think you can look forward to anything inside or outside work. And to accept that work, there's going to be some grind, but it's not going to be 100%. So if it's 50%, focus on the 50% that's not grind, and that's what should help the motivation.
And I think it's like you introduced an interesting point there around that anticipation.
Yeah.
Because what they say is that like the place of your holidays that you get the best benefit, the most benefit, is actually in the anticipation of the holidays.
Yeah.
So when you go to work, you know, what is the next holiday? Like, I know that might sound like a cop-out.
Might be 6 months away, but great, that'll keep you going for 6 months.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it does.
So is there any other last final tip for just how you get your routine, how you can get in a routine in a positive way heading back to work? Final tip.
Look, I reckon sorry, cut in there. Look, the most important thing for me is getting your sleep right.
Yeah.
Because, you know, on holidays you tend to stay up late, and because you can get up late. But if you're staying up late and having to get up at, you know, whatever time in the morning to get to work, you're crunching your sleep. And if you can get that right, then I reckon everything else will fall out.
Pete?
Biggest tip, discipline.
Yep.
You've got to ignore the feeling of being unmotivated and still do it. And just do it for 10 minutes. And then see how you feel. And that's often the case. It will keep you going.
All right, I think that's good advice, guys. Pete Clark, their Asia Pacific Director of Executive Coaching, Rogens SI, and John Raymond, Principal of Institute of Executive Coaching and Leadership. Thanks so much for being with us on the show.